To understand the political mechanics of 6th century Europe, look at two tools resting on a table, a dagger and a pair of iron shears. When King Clovis I died in 511 AD, his Frankish state was divided into 4 distinct territories. The kingdom effectively became a 4-way joint venture, shared equally among his surviving sons. This division followed the legal code of partible inheritance. Under this system, the state is treated strictly as a physical asset to be divided equally among all legitimate male heirs. However, Frankish royalty practiced polygamy. Multiple wives produced multiple lines of legitimate sons. By distributing the state evenly to every male descendant, the mathematics of the system guaranteed a rapid, exponential dilution of individual shares. One of the junior partners in this 511 AD division was Chlothar I. Over the next 50 years, he executed a methodical, relentless campaign of co-founder liquidation. To analyze the Merovingian dynasty accurately, we have to discard any medieval illusions of chivalry. We are looking at the strict mechanics of a sociopathic corporate restructuring. 13 years into the joint venture, the brothers fought the Battle of Vézérance in Burgundy. During the fighting, Clothar's brother and co-founder, Chlodomer, was killed on the battlefield. His sudden death immediately triggered a severe corporate crisis for the surviving brothers. By law, Chlodomer's massive territorial holding, the Kingdom of Orleans, passed directly to his 3 underage sons. This posed a lethal mathematical threat. If these young boys survived to adulthood, they would preserve their father's equity, permanently diluting the wealth and power of the remaining brothers. Chlothar dispatched a trusted emissary to Paris to confront the boys' guardian, their grandmother, Queen Clotilde. The emissary arrived at her court and presented the ultimate Merovingian ultimatum. Look closely at these blades. The emissary placed a pair of iron shears and a dagger in front of the queen. In Frankish biological royalty, uncut hair served as a physical stock certificate. Only kings and legitimate heirs were permitted to wear their hair long. Shearing the boys' hair would strip them of their royal status and force them into strict monastic lives. This forced monastic exile acted as a legal mechanism to permanently revoke their equity shares, allowing the uncles to absorb the Kingdom of Orleans. Queen Clotilde delivered a shocking response. She categorically refused to let her grandson's hair be cut. Clothar's reaction to this refusal was immediate and highly calculated. He took hold of his 10-year-old nephew, drove a blade into his armpit, and killed him. When the younger brother pleaded, Chlothar demanded his execution, stabbing him to death. These assassinations functioned as a mandatory structural action, ensuring Chlothar closed the loophole of permanent share dilution. By 531 AD, Chlothar and his brother Theuderic expanded their portfolio, successfully executing a hostile military takeover of the Thuringian kingdom. In this medieval illustration, notice the seated female figure. This is Princess Radegund, a surviving member of the defeated Thuringian royal family. Chlothar seized Radegund as high-value hewn capital. Her bloodline provided the political legitimacy needed to secure authority over the newly acquired Thuringian territory. She was transported to his villa, held in close physical proximity to his executive center of power, and eventually forced to marry him. Trapped inside the Frankish court, Radegund adopted a life of extreme asceticism. She restricted herself to a strict vegan diet, refused to drink anything but water, and bound her neck and arms in heavy iron circlets that cut deeply into her flesh. Since she could not legally or physically escape the political merger, Radegund used extreme self-mortification to systematically devalue herself as a royal asset. Operating in 6th century Europe meant navigating a highly volatile regulatory risk mechanism known as the Fida, or the blood feud. The blood feud operated on a strict, culturally enforced code of absolute retaliation. If a rival was murdered, any surviving kin were legally bound to initiate retaliatory warfare. This cultural mandate meant that leaving any survivors created a permanent liability. Partial liquidations were impossible to manage safely. To execute a successful hostile takeover, an executive had to absolutely annihilate the entire competing branch. The ultimate test of this brutal rule came from inside Clothar's own household, triggered by a severe rebellion from his son, Crom. Crom broke ranks and actively aligned with external political entities to secure his own equity position against his father. When the rebellion inevitably collapsed on the battlefield, Crom fled west to the coast of Brittany. He gathered his wife and daughters, attempting a desperate escape by sea to England. But Chlothar pursued his son relentlessly across the territory, refusing to let a rival claimant escape. Crom and his family were intercepted and captured on the coast, right before they could reach the safety of the boats. Rather than a quick battlefield execution, Chlothar mandated a highly specific, brutal method of disposal. Cram, his wife, and young daughters were locked inside a wooden shack. They were strangled, and the building burned to the ground. Family annihilation functioned as the ultimate risk mitigation strategy. It was the only way to permanently close a hostile takeover without triggering future blood feuds. By the year 558 AD, decades of warfare and assassinations reached their mathematical conclusion. Chlothar had survived all his original co-founders. We can track this final consolidation on the map. The 4 distinct territorial zones grind together, forming a single unified monopoly. Every acre of the Frankish state was finally consolidated under the direct control of one aging executive. Yet the vast physical wealth of this unified kingdom stood in sharp contrast to the stark, paranoid isolation that defined the end of his life. His sole grip on power lasted only 3 years. In late 561 AD, Chlothar suffered a sudden physical decline and died of acute pneumonia at the age of 64. He had spent half a century mastering the brutal mechanics of his environment, but his lifelong campaign contained a fatal underlying flaw. He completely failed to alter the structural bylaws of partible inheritance. Upon his death, the map violently fractures back into 4 distinct separate pieces. The Merovingian system structurally guaranteed its own endless fracturing. 50 years of calculated bloodshed had achieved nothing but resetting the board, leaving Clothar's 4 surviving sons to begin the cycle again.